Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that, well, literally fuels us every single day. Nutrition. We're diving into Chapter 15 of Peter Attia's fantastic book, Outlive. It's called Putting Nutritional Biochemistry into Practice, How to Find the Right Eating Pattern for You. Our mission today is really to cut through all that noise, the endless diet advice, and pull out the actionable stuff that can actually help you find an eating pattern that works, like long-term. Get ready for some surprising facts, maybe even a shift in how you think about food.
It's so true. Attia kicks things off by mentioning how many patients come to him just really unhappy with their diet results. He even shares this great story from his residency when he was not thin, Peter, as he puts it. He tried going vegan thinking, okay, this is the key to weight loss. But instead of salads, he ended up eating, lots of chips, processed veggie burgers, stuff like that. 6 months in, no weight lost. He realized he was basically just on a vegan version of the standard American diet, the SAD.
That's such a key point. So the SAD isn't just about specific foods, but the whole design, the system itself.
Exactly. But Attia argues the HIZ isn't really a diet, it's a business model. It's brilliantly optimized for things like mass production, low cost, long shelf life, and making things taste really good. But critically, it leaves out a fifth factor: harmlessness, the negative health impact. That's like an unintended side effect, kind of like with the tobacco industry back in the day. The SAD is just packed with added sugar, highly refined carbs, processed oils, and these super calorie-dense foods. And yeah, processed isn't always bad. Cheesy processed, right? But the SAD, that pretty much equals junk food. Our bodies, evolved for scarcity and not this constant flood of calories. We're really good at storing fat. So the SAD leads to what Attia calls overnourishment. It pushes out essential nutrients, especially protein, and just wages war on our metabolic health. Get this. The #1 source of calories for Americans. Things like cakes, cookies, grain-based desserts. Eating that stuff repeatedly causes these huge blood glucose surges that just overwhelm our system.
Wow, okay. That really paints a picture. So if we need to escape this SAD trap, how do we even start to navigate the world of eating better?
Well, Attia simplifies it really nicely. He says, almost all diets, if you strip away the fancy labels, boil down to one of 3 core strategies to cut calories. First, there's caloric restriction, or CR. It's just eating less overall. Doesn't matter so much what or when, just less total energy. Second is dietary restriction, DR. That's eating less of something specific like cutting out sugar or carbs or maybe fats. And third, time restriction, TR. This means limiting when you eat, using eating windows or different kinds of fasting. And here's the bottom line. If you're overnourished, which 2/3 of Americans are, you have to use at least one of these levers. Otherwise, you're probably still eating too much overall. Quick pros and cons he mentions. CR. Super effective for weight loss, good for muscle retention if done right, but tracking is a pain and it's hard to stick with. DR here. That's most common. Simple idea, right? Cut out a food group. But it only works if that food group was a big calorie source for you and you can still overeat other stuff. TR. Can be the easiest for some people, just focusing on timing. But big risk of binging in the eating window and often leads to not getting enough protein, which means muscle loss.
Okay, let's dig into the first one. Caloric restriction. Sounds simple enough, right? Just eat less.
In theory, yeah. We know excess calories get stored as fat. When that fat storage overflows into organs, that drives metabolic problems, heart disease, cancer, even Alzheimer's. And calorie counting does work for weight loss in people. Think Weight Watchers. But the constant hunger and needing to track every single bite, those are huge hurdles. But here's where Attia points out something really interesting. He talks about these 2 big long-running studies on rhesus monkeys looking at CR and lifespan, and they seem to find completely opposite things initially. The Wisconsin study back in 2009 found CR monkeys lived way longer and were much healthier. Headlines were like, "Dieting monkeys offer hope." Then, just 3 years later, the NIH study comes out saying, nope, their CR monkeys did not live longer than the controls. Headlines then were, "Severe diet doesn't prolong life."
Whoa, okay, so what gives? How could they be so different? What was the key difference?
It all came down to the quality of the food, believe it or not, the Wisconsin monkeys. They were eating this highly processed, sugary chow, think like monkey fast food. So their control group got pretty unhealthy insulin resistance, higher disease rates. Eating less of that junk food absolutely helped the CR group live longer by simply avoiding those diet-induced diseases. But the NIH monkeys, they ate a much higher quality, more natural diet, closer to what monkeys actually eat. It wasn't nearly as harmful to begin with, so for them, being on a good quality diet already meant that super strict CR didn't add much extra longevity benefit. Attia pulls out 4 key lessons from looking at both studies together. 1. Avoiding metabolic problems, mainly by ditching junk food, is absolutely crucial for living longer. 2. There seems to be a really strong link between calories and cancer risk. The CR monkeys had way less cancer. 3. Food quality matters just as much as quantity. If you eat the SAD, you probably do need to eat a lot less of it. And 4. If you're already metabolically healthy and eating a high-quality diet, severe CR might not be necessary, and it has downsides. He warns that serious long-term CR can weaken your immune system, cause muscle loss, constant hunger, especially tough for older folks. Often, just not eating a crap diet is enough.
That's a fantastic reframing. Focusing on quality is huge. Okay, let's shift gears to dietary restriction, or DR. This feels like what most people mean when they say diet, right? Cutting stuff out.
Exactly. DR is all about identifying the bogeyman foods, the things you're going to eliminate or drastically reduce. The more common that food is in your diet, the more calories you cut by removing it. Think like cutting out soda or bread or whatever. Our ancestors, they were metabolically healthy, but they didn't live in this food environment we have now, where overeating is just so easy. So, DR is about building some walls around what we eat. The big advantage here is individualization. You can start small, maybe just sugary drinks, then maybe all added sugar, then maybe more carbs generally. Carb restriction often works well for people because it can reduce appetite and limit food choices automatically. But, and this is a big but, you can still overeat. You cut carbs but load up on fatty steaks and bacon. You might still be taking in too many calories. And crucially, DR shouldn't compromise other important things, especially getting enough protein to keep your muscle mass and getting enough healthy fats to keep your cardiovascular risk low, something we track with markers like ApoB. That's a key measure of those risky cholesterol particles.
Can you give an example of how this tailored approach works?
Sure. Attia talks about a patient named Eduardo. Looked healthy, played soccer, late 30s. But he walks in with full-blown type 2 diabetes. His HbA1c, which measures long-term blood sugar, was sky high at 9.7%. The intervention basically almost completely cut out carbs. No more tortillas, rice, beans, or the Gatorade he drank daily. It wasn't even called keto, just removing those major carb sources. 5 months later, his markers were minimal. Diabetes reversed, lost 25 pounds. It just shows how powerful DR can be when you target the right thing for that specific person's metabolism. Attia also shares how his own thinking evolved. He used to be a huge fan of strict ketogenic diets, but then patients started coming back. Some just couldn't stick with it, others had their lipids, their ApoB go through the roof. That led him to what he calls Nutrition 3.0. It's not about finding the one evil food to ban, it's about finding the best mix of macronutrients for you, the individual, that you can actually sustain long term.
Okay, Nutrition 3.0, that makes sense. So if we're thinking about that optimal mix, what are the 4 macronutrients we really need to understand?
Right, let's break them down. First, alcohol. Attia considers it its own category. It's pretty calorie dense, about 7 calories per gram. It offers 0 nutritional value. It's purely for pleasure, hedonic, and for someone already overnourished, it's really disruptive. Empty calories, sure, but it also slows down fat burning and often leads to mindless eating alongside it. Net negative for longevity. It's a known carcinogen linked to Alzheimer's, partly through disrupting sleep. He dismisses those old moderate drinking is good for you claims, pointing to better research methods like Mendelian randomization that suggest those benefits were likely due to healthier lifestyles among moderate drinkers, not the alcohol itself. His advice, be mindful, limit it, ideally less than 7 drinks a week. Next up, carbohydrates. Probably the most confusing macro. They're not inherently good or bad. It's all about the dose, your individual tolerance, and your activity level. Carbs are our main quick energy source. Excess gets stored first as glycogen, then as fat. This process involves insulin. Too many carbs, especially refined ones, contribute to things like NAFLD, that's fatty liver disease, and insulin resistance, leading to type 2 diabetes. Those repeated big blood sugar spikes are the problem. An athlete needs and can handle way more carbs than someone sitting at a desk all day. And quality matters hugely. Think pie versus a baked potato. Big difference in blood sugar response.
And this is where that tool you mentioned, the continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, comes in. That sounds like it can really help figure out individual tolerance.
Exactly. CGM is kind of revolutionary for this. It's this tiny sensor you wear, usually on your arm, and it sends real-time glucose readings straight to your phone. So you see, like minute by minute, how your blood sugar reacts to specific foods, to exercise, even to stress or lack of sleep. It's like upgrading from a single snapshot, that annual fasting glucose test, to a high-definition video feed of your metabolism. Attia describes 2 phases of using it. But there's the insight phase. People are often just stunned to see what actually happens when they eat certain things they thought were fine. Then comes the behavior phase. Once you know that bagel sends your glucose soaring, it's much harder to eat it mindlessly. You start making better choices. He lists some key things CGM reveals. 1. Not all carbs or equal refined ones spike you way faster. 2. Stuff like rice and oatmeal, surprisingly high glycemic impact for many people. 3. Exercise, especially aerobic, is amazing for clearing glucose out of your blood. 4. Sleep is critical. Just 5-6 hours can make your glucose response way worse the next day. 5. Stress spikes glucose too through cortisol. 6. Just wearing the monitor makes you more mindful of that Hawthorne effect. It allows for real personalization. Instead of just guessing, you can adjust your diet based on your actual data, aiming for, say, an average glucose under 100 milli-GDL.
That's fascinating stuff. Really powerful insights. Okay, so moving beyond carbs, let's talk protein. You mentioned it's often displaced by the SAD.
Yes, and Attia argues it's arguably the most important macro. The word protein comes from proteos, meaning primary or first place. And it really is. It builds everything: muscle, enzymes, hormones, antibodies, hair, skin, nails. 9 essential amino acids must come from your diet. The standard USRDA, about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. He pretty much calls it a joke. It might prevent deficiency diseases, but it's nowhere near enough to thrive, especially as we get older and naturally start losing muscle. He recommends aiming for a minimum of 1.6 gigaclams per day, and ideally closer to 2.2 gigaclams per day for active people trying to build or maintain muscle. That's roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight, significantly more than the RDA. And it's actually quite hard to eat too much protein. The safe upper limit is very high. Needs vary, of course, based on your sex, weight, activity level, and age. Older adults generally need more. Since there's no CGM for protein, tracking your lean body mass using DIDEXA scans is the best way to see if your intake is adequate. Plant proteins. They're less bioavailable and have different amino acid profiles, so you need to be more deliberate if you rely on them. Beyond muscle, protein helps lower liver fat, improves insulin sensitivity, and is very satiating. It helps control hunger by suppressing ghrelin, the hunger hormone.
The message is definitely coming through. Don't skimp on protein. So what does this really mean for you, the listener?
It means protein is the one macronutrient you absolutely cannot afford to neglect. You can technically survive with 0 carbs or very low fat, but you need adequate protein. Compromising protein to cut calories, especially if you're older or already don't have much muscle, that's a really bad trade-off. Counterproductive, really. Okay, last one. Fat, also essential, but definitely more complicated and often misunderstood thanks to decades of fat phobia. Fats are fuel, yes, but they're also building blocks for hormones and cell membranes. And they help with satiety, especially with protein. We usually talk about 3 types: saturated, SFA, monounsaturated, MUFA, think olive oil, avocados, and polyunsaturated. PUFA includes omega-6s and omega-3s. Important point. No food is just one type of fat. A steak has saturated fat, sure, but also monounsaturated. So the goal isn't elimination, it's tweaking the ratios. Attia generally aims to get patients to boost MUFAs significantly, making them maybe 50-55% of fat intake, cut back SFAs to maybe 15-20%, and adjust PUFAs, especially increasing marine omega-3s like from fish oil or fatty fish.
Okay, but if we connect this back, why is the advice on fats always seem so confusing? You hear studies saying saturated fat is fine, then others saying it's terrible.
Yeah, that's where relying purely on broad population studies, what Attia calls medicine 2.0, kind of falls apart for nutrition. The effect sizes in many large nutrition studies are actually quite small, and individual responses vary wildly. Some people, Attia included, seem to handle saturated fat pretty well without their lipids going haywire. Others eat a bit of butter and their ApoB shoots up. So, medicine 3.0 says, forget the population average. What's the best mix for this specific patient? You have to monitor your own lipid panel, your ApoB, your inflammation markers to see how you respond. But as a general starting point, making MUFAs, especially from high-quality extra virgin olive oil, the foundation of your dietary fat is usually a very good bet.
Right, individualization again. Okay, we've covered the what and how much. Now let's hit that third strategy. Time restriction, TR fasting. It's super popular these days.
It really is. But Attia calls it a tactical conundrum, meaning it can be a powerful tool, but it comes with some serious potential downsides, and he's become more skeptical of it being some kind of cure-all. Now, good things do happen when you don't eat. Insulin levels drop, the liver can unload stored fat, you might enter ketosis, hunger can paradoxically disappear, and you activate cellular cleanup processes like autophagy. Fasting triggers stuff we want to see. But the human evidence isn't always as strong as the hype, and you have to be smart about it. He breaks TR into 3 main types. 1. Short-term eating windows, like the popular 168 method, eating only within an 8-hour window each day. For some, this is an easy way to cut calories just by stopping evening snacks. But beyond that, the metabolic benefits seem pretty minimal in humans, and the big drawbacks: it's really hard to get enough protein in just 8 hours, increasing muscle loss risk, and it's very easy to overcompensate and eat too much during the window, potentially leading to fat gain. So maybe more of a discipline tool than a magic bullet. 2. Alternate day fasting, ADF. Eat normally one day, eat very little or nothing the next. Research shows this can lead to weight loss, sure, but often with a significant cost. Greater loss of lean muscle mass compared to just simple calorie cutting, and people tend to feel lousy and reduce their activity levels. That's a major concern. Attia feels frequent, long fasts usually aren't worth this muscle cost. 3. Longer-term therapeutic fasting. This is something Attia reserves only for really hard-to-fix patients with severe metabolic problems. He tells the story of Tom Dayspring, 60s, 240 pounds, severe fatty liver disease, Neo Valet, could barely walk. Tom had tried strict keto for years, but just couldn't stick to it. His body wouldn't release its stored fat effectively. So Attia put him on a pretty aggressive plan. 1 week per month, Monday to Friday, only 700 calories a day, mostly fat and protein. The other 3 weeks, he ate a more normal, but still starch and sugar-restricted diet in an 8-hour window. Tom actually found it manageable. Hunger vanished after day 3. The results were dramatic. Lost 67 pounds, all his blood markers normalized, liver enzymes fine, got off meds, could walk easily again. The fasting seemed to reboot his crashed metabolism. But Attia stresses this is an extremist tool, only for cases where the benefit of massive fat loss outweighs the unavoidable muscle loss. Most people cannot and should not risk losing muscle mass like that.
That's an incredible story about Tom, but definitely underscores the need for caution and personalization. Wow. This whole discussion really drives home that Nutrition 3.0 idea, moving beyond simple labels.
Exactly. Attia's perspective has really shifted. He now sees nutrition as less about achieving peak performance or extreme longevity for the already healthy, and more as a crucial rescue tactic for people who are metabolically unhealthy. And critically, for maintaining muscle mass as we age, he says, bad nutrition can hurt us more than good nutrition can help us. At its core, the problem is usually energy balance. CR, DR, TR, they're all just different tools to achieve the same goal: reducing energy intake to correct that state of overnourishment and metabolic dysfunction that affects so many people. The challenge: most Americans are metabolically unhealthy. So the real goal is finding a way to eat less energy sustainably, get rid of the sugary, high glucose stuff without sacrificing that all-important protein intake and losing muscle. Remember, protein is paramount. Don't cut calories by cutting protein, especially if you're older or under-muscled. Other things help too. Of course, exercise like Zone 2 training helps your body handle glucose better, having more muscle helps, and getting good sleep, which we'll talk about next time, is vital for metabolic health. And yeah, watch out for things that drive up cardiovascular risk markers like ApoB, too much saturated fat for some people, or too many refined carbs raising triglycerides. If there was one single thing Attia could wave a magic wand and remove from everyone's diet: fructose sweetened drinks, sodas, fruit juices, all of it. Why? They just dump way too much fructose on your liver and gut way too fast without the fiber and water you get from eating actual fruit. His advice: just eat the fruit.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you listening right now? It really sounds like the best nutrition plan isn't some named diet, but the one you can actually stick with long term.
Precisely. It's about finding your balance, understanding your own risks. Are you fighting metabolic issues primarily, or is cardiovascular disease the bigger concern? There isn't one right answer for everyone. And Attia leaves us with this final thought, almost a challenge, especially for those of us who get really deep in the nutritional weeds. Stop overthinking nutrition so much. Put the book down. Go outside and exercise. Sometimes action is the best analysis.
A perfect, powerful note to end on. Action over perfection, maybe. We've covered so much ground today: the problems with the SAD, the nuances of CR, DR, and TR, the vital importance of protein, and understanding your response through tools like CGM. It really comes back to that personalized, sustainable nutrition 3.0 approach. Next time on The Deep Dive, we are absolutely going to follow that thread and explore how sleep, something many of us neglect, profoundly impacts our metabolic health, building directly on today's discussion. Definitely join us for that. Until then, keep exploring, keep